recapping the action from week 0 of college football. Which quarterback prospects are moving and jostling for position in our weekly updated quarterback rankings? We have money makers and bag fumblers and the game ball. All this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everyday. As you know, I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. If you can hear my voice, head over to the YouTube channel. Go ahead, hit that like button. Don't forget to comment and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel over at Locked On NFL Draft DP. It is Monday, man, and we are doing a college football week 0 recap, right? We're going to talk about updated quarterback rankings, right? And we had a couple quarterbacks placed. We're going to talk about how did they move up and down that scale of QB rankings. And then we're going to talk about the money makers and bag fumblers. Yes, we're bringing the segment back. The season's back, so we're bringing back the segments, man. And then we're going to finish this thing off like we do on Mondays, man, with a game ball. We're handing out the game ball. Yes, Coach K is back. Yes, Coach D is back. Coach DP is back. And we're hopping into the locker room and handing out those game balls to DP. Before we get started, man, why don't you hit them with our title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Updated quarterback rankings, recapping the action from week 0 of college football. And we had some interesting games. We had a game, Keith, that we talked about on Friday, Florida State and Georgia Tech. And two of the guys that played in that game, we put, 3 guys actually, we put make a statement, and 2 of them were quarterbacks, DJ Uiagalelei, and then Haynes King. And at the time, DJ was around our 7th to 8th quarterback on the list. Well, the game didn't go as planned. Florida State did not look overall, didn't look prepared. I don't know if it's that trip to Dublin, Ireland. Might need to cut that off the schedule because guys just didn't look like themselves. And updating the list, from week 0, Shedeur Sanders still at 1, Carson Beckett still at 2, Jalen Miller at 3, Quinn Ewers still holds the 4th spot, Donovan Smith out of Houston holds the 5th spot, Cam Ward from Miami holds the 6th, Jackson Dart is at 7 from Ole Miss. Drew Aller moved him up from 10 to 8 from Penn State. At number 9, the new entry to this list, Preston Stone, quarterback out of SMU. And then Max Brosman moved from 9 to 10. And Keith, it's the DJU thing. And when you looked at the numbers, he wasn't like terrible in any stretch, in my opinion, in this game. It was just the fact of the comfort level clearly wasn't there. First game in a new system, throwing to new weapons. His top actual weapon was out, Hakeem Williams, who was the 5-star wide receiver recruit, the guy that gave them size and speed and separation. Yeah, like he was out for the game. He's supposed to be back soon, but he couldn't play in this game. DJU was 18 of 26, it's about 69% completion, 189 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. But he only had a few passes that traveled 5 or more yards down the field. That off their offensive line, it was just everything that could go wrong for Florida State went wrong. Like after that first drive or so, Georgia Tech stopped the run game. They started blitzing. They started attacking that offensive line. They started dominating the trenches. And then you saw DJU he wasn't comfortable. Now, I will say he made some strides later on in that game. I think, the drive that tied the game up or whatever it was, you saw him make big-time throws, but it just was such an uneven performance. So had to drop him off the list and move up a guy who actually fought through that adversity, which I'll get to a little bit later, in Preston Stone. But this is going to be a weekly thing for us, Keith, where we're going to look at the action from Saturday, and we're going to adjust our rankings based on it.
Yeah, so I would say this, DP. It was a very weird game, I think, right? Even towards the ending. And I didn't know what in multiple things. I was watching it and I'm like, okay, what do I pull away from this in reference to DJU, right? Is because I think this is the third team where it's been weird, right? Lee talking about like the game play calling. So I'm asking myself, hey, is DJU throwing a bunch of interceptions in practice, which makes the head coaches and the offensive coordinators uncomfortable with just putting a rock in his hand and let him spin it, right? Because you watch the very end of that game when they had to drive down for a touchdown, he made some big time plays, right? And you seen the arm strength. You like, okay, this big boy could spin it. And then it's like once they got back into crunch time, like once they got to different moments, they were still trying to run the football. It's like, listen, like you enforcing your will on Georgia Tech on this day, week 0, in Dublin, Ireland, is not happening, right? Try another day, try another week, maybe it happen for you. Not happening today. So there's just a reluctancy of allowing DJU, right, just to go 4 wide, 5 wide and throw the football. Is like, yeah, and it wasn't a great performance because, like you said at the beginning, he looked kind of, don't want to say gun shy, right, but very gun shy is almost the word you have to use, right? I don't want to say it, but that's almost the word you have to use. Like it was very dink and dunk, take the safe route. You didn't see him push the ball down the field, right, making plays, things like that. So I could definitely understand sliding him out of the top 10. And we'll see, I guess, offensively, schematically, what does Florida State adopt, right? It looks like that they don't have the same team from last year. That's what everybody's going to say. They may have to sling the rock, DP. They let Joe and Travis sling the rock, right? And we know their process was not great, but Joe and Travis figured it out. So let's talk about, the late night game, right? The SMU versus Nevada, and talk about Preston Stone because he had a rather roller coaster ride also, but finished.
Yeah, well, Preston Stone, he came out early and come to find out through Twitter, shout out to Twitter and or X and a lot of the followers and everything there. Because at one point I was watching the game and I had to go downstairs, came back up, and I saw the backup quarterback. And I was like, wait, did Preston Stone get hurt? I was like, what's going on? So I tweeted, I was like, what happened? And they was like, nah. I was like, did he get benched? And it was like, some people was like, I think so. And then someone let me know, a couple people let me know that no, the coach said they were going to run a 2 QB system. I was like, all right. So Preston Stone was your guy last year. He balled out for you. You in the ACC now, and you want to go ahead and get creative. Let's run 2 QBs. Doesn't really make sense to me. That never really works because it puts more pressure. And you saw it kind of felt like that with Preston Stone out the gate, where he wanted to come out and make plays or make throws, and instead of settling in, he was kind of feel like he was pressing to prove, hey, let's keep the backup. No, there's no QB2. Let's keep QB1 in all 4 quarters. They pulled him out. They put in the backup in, and he did solid. But when they put Preston Stone back in and they went down, I think, 2 scores at one point or something like that, Nevada was up. Yep. Nevada was up in that game, Keith, and to watch Preston Stone come back in, and a guy that, to me, in that game, 56.7% completion, 254 pass yards, and a touchdown. The ability to go through that adversity, the emotional swings of momentum and everything else, and to stay like even keeled enough to come back in that game and lead them back down the field and eventually win this game, which they did. And for me, man, listen, this is a guy, listen at 6'1", 220. I'm going to tell you who he reminds me a little bit of from last year, Michael Pratt. You know what I mean? He reminds me of Michael Pratt in terms of like game, body type, the way he looks in the pocket, the way he moves, stuff like that, the way he throws. I see a lot of Michael Pratt in him. Now, I want you to, if you get to the Senior Bowl, let's not do that, but let's actually like show up at the Senior Bowl a little bit better. But I think that this is a guy that he was already on my radar anyway, because I was looking at his film and everything. I was like, all right, there's something to this kid. But he went out there and he handled business.
Yeah, I'm with that. He definitely showed up and showed out, and I can understand moving him in, right? And then we still have, this will be fun, DP, because I think after this upcoming week, right, there's gonna be a whole lot of movement. He's talking about up that board, so that'll definitely be fun. But DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing. What's up next? The money and the bag fumblers, right? Which draft prospects made themselves some money and moved up draft boards, and then which guys lost some money out there? We're gonna talk about that coming up next.
When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. So all you need to do is post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Money makers and bag fumblers. Keith, a young man at the position that we appreciate on this pod, the running backs. We show love to the running backs in this pod. You are not devaluing the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. Georgia Tech running back Jamal Haynes. You talk about making some money. He was out there on his Darren Sproles type of game, Keith. He had 11 rushes, 75 rush yards. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. He also had like 2 receptions for almost 20 yards. But it was the fact of like just the way that for a small running back, by the way, he's just like 5'9", I believe like 90 pounds, if I remember correctly. And what I really appreciated with him, Keith, is that this young man is not afraid to run between the tackles. You know, he was not afraid of 5'9", a $190. He ran hard. You know what I mean? He attacked the defense and he put them on their heels. But not only that, he showed good contact balance. You talking about a guy that, understand that you are shorter. As a shorter former running back myself, you got to be able to play to that and play to your base and be able to stay on your feet, right? Because low man wins. They're not going to get lower than you. You're shorter than everybody on the field. So his ability to stay on his feet, but also make guys miss, show some elusiveness in the hole and in the alley. Yeah, and listening to their coach, this seems like it's going to be a theme for them. And this is their identity at Georgia Tech, to run the dang football. He said it after the game, just run the ball. So I expect Jamal Haynes, who had just for our listeners who don't know much about him, out of Loganville, Georgia, last year, the young man had 156 carries, 931 rush yards. He averaged 6 yards per carry last year with 7 rushing touchdowns. He averaged almost 7 yards per carry in this game. He made himself some money.
Yeah, no, he definitely did. If there was a standout performer, right, that wasn't the quarterback, because everybody want to look at the quarterback, right? It was definitely him, and I think he set the tone for this offense, right? Because it was how he picked up the yardage, right? Like, you know what, we're gonna run through this Florida State defense, and the Florida State defense that we're about to get to, in the bag fumblers, right? He really showed well, DP, and I was impressed. Is he a junior? Like, is he draft eligible this year? That's what I want. Sure.
I think he's a true junior.
True junior, yeah. So potentially you're talking about throwing another name into this pot of running backs that we keep saying are so talented, right? And then you mix them in with the Trevor Etiennes, right? Those guys that are 5'8", 190 pounds, RJ Harvey from UCF, right? It's a lot of those running backs that fit that mold in this draft class. Even LSU's Josh Williams, right? He just got named the number 18 team captain. Another guy that fits that same mold. But DP, I don't know if you have another money maker, but I was going to list out the tight end from SMU, RJ Maryland, straight up ball down. They're talking about this guy can be a potential All-American. He's talking about 8 receptions, 162 yards, and a touchdown. Took over the game, right? Was easily, you want to say the best and most consistent player on the field is RJ Maryland.
100%, 6'4", 237, 240 pounds. He has a track background, and you saw that when they put him in the slot when they went empty and ran slot fades with him, and he's outrunning DBs as if he's the wide receiver, right? Like, and just the speed to where that phrase, if he's even, he's leaving. You saw that with RJ Maryland, and can you talk about it with Jamal Haynes? Inserting your name in a loaded running back class. Now you got a RJ Maryland inserting his name in a loaded tight end class, where it's like, okay, he may not be the greatest run blocker and he, things of that nature, but we talk about a mismatch type of guy where he's too athletic for linebackers, right? And if he plays strong enough to outmuscle safeties, Now it's like, okay, who do you put on him? A nickel? Most nickels are 5'9" to 5'10". Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work out. But he's 6'4", 6'3", 6'4". So then he could body a nickel, and when he can outrun guys, and he's got the speed of a receiver down the field. And for a team that, especially with the quarterback Preston Stone, that they're gonna throw the ball down the field. I think he's going to be one of their biggest playmakers this year in testing the vertical plane for this offense and back up defenses to give them the ability to check the ball down, get it to their quick playmakers, run the ball, and things like that to be balanced. But this young man, like you said, he took the game over, Keith. And will he win the game ball? We'll see. He might, but like he took that game over, on Saturday night, and in the primetime slot, I think that was you talking about making some money. I love to see that from a player that wasn't relatively known before Saturday night.
Yep, I agree 100% with DP. Let's switch this thing over to the bag Fumblers, right? And have this conversation. I know where I'm going to start at. I'm starting with this Florida State defensive front. And 3, 4 guys, right? Like when we talk about the pregame show, DP, I know they talked about it on ESPN College Game Day. I know they talked about it like right before the game started. It was like, hey, first of all, there's a couple transfers in right to this Florida State defensive front. And then secondly, it's like, you know what? These guys are just flat out talented, right? From one end all the way to the other end. From Marvin Jones Jr., right? Then you had Darryl Jackson. And then I'm forgetting the other defensive tackle.
Joshua Farmer.
Joshua Farmer, and then you go all the way to Patrick Payton, right? And it's like, hey, these guys are going to set the tone. And I'll even say this, DP. I had a friend text me, right? And he was like, hey, I'm trying to see. Maybe he was looking at some sports betting stuff. Maybe not, right? Hey, is Georgia Tech going to win by 10 points? And I was like, you know what? No, he said, is Florida State going to win by 10 points? And I was like, probably 17, honestly, because this defense is just going to be able to smother Georgia Tech, right? And I thought it was going to start with the trenches, right? And you feel somewhat good about your predictions from time to time, DP, just because you've watched the film, right? So you know the players, you know the prospects. And I did not predict that to happen, to be able to run the rock. I think it was 100-yard difference. I think Georgia Tech outrushed Florida State by 100 yards. That just shouldn't happen, point blank, period. And so it just they have to rebound that Florida State defensive front, because especially the defensive ends, DP, and we're gonna have to have this conversation a couple weeks into it, right? These were fringe first round guys, right? That if they keep up with these type of performances, now you're talking about middle of the second round, third round type of football players.
100%. Yeah, Florida State ran for 31 carries for 98 rush yards, 3.2 yards per carry themselves, while Georgia Tech 36 carries, 190 yards, 5.3 yards per carry, and 3 rushing touchdowns. And yeah, like between Jamal Haynes and Haynes King, who had 15 carries and 54 yards himself as the quarterback, yeah, that defensive front. And there's a clip that, and I remember watching it in the game, but I saw the clip again resurface on Twitter, where the Georgia Tech offensive line created a run lane or an alley that was big enough for a semi-truck to run through untouched. And I was like, where are the bodies? Where are Darryl Jackson is listed at 6'5", 330, long arms. I watched the tape coming into our Friday show, Keith, where he went up against Georgia last year, against Tate Ratledge and all those big monsters on that Georgia interior offensive line. And you talk about holding your own, setting the point of attack, holding up there, anchoring, separating, closing gaps. He did all of that. And I'm looking like, where's Waldo in this situation? Like, where's Darryl Jackson? Because that's the big body guy on that D line that you wanted to see be dominant. And for me, I go right to Patrick Payton, Keith. And it's 1 week. He's got another 11 weeks or so, maybe get to the playoffs, get to the college football playoffs with 12 teams. He's got another opportunity, many opportunities to rebound. But for a guy that we highlighted as a late in that segment, I was like, he needs to make a statement. You are Patrick Payton. You're one of the top edge rushers in the country. We need you to go out here and dominate this right tackle. Well, Keith, wasn't able to happen. And not only was it not able to happen, they ran the ball so much. Patrick Payton only got 12 opportunities to rush the passer, Keith. He was tied for second on the team in pass rush snaps. Only 12 in the game because they ran the ball so much they didn't even try to throw it. But Patrick, Darryl, Josh, Marvin, if y'all stop the run, now you can pin your ears back. And to me, this was a situation. I'm not saying that they slept on their opponent, but I low-key kind of felt like it was a situation where they underestimated their opponent. Maybe you could still say slept on. I thought they underestimated that offensive line, and those boys came to play.
Yeah, DP, this is what I'm doing post-game, right? I'm walking into the locker room, and I'm looking my players in the eyes, right? And I'm telling them, like, I hope y'all understand now that 2023 is over. I hope y'all get it now. You know what I'm saying? Because we have to go out there and reprove ourselves. We are not the same team from last year. We can't just roll our helmet and out there. We may have to win a different way, DP, and it's going to be on them. It's going to be on the coaching staff, right, to figure some things out, like offensively, like what's the rhythm, what's the routine. I think they played 4 or 5 running backs yesterday, right? It's like what, how do you figure that thing out? So we'll see and just continue to monitor, right? Like you said, it's week 0. They still have potential of 13 games to play if they make it into the playoffs. So we'll continue to monitor that situation. But DP, matter of fact, let me say Coach DP. Coach K is coming back, making another appearance as we hop into the locker rooms and we hand out the game balls for week 0 of college football.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Guys, on this podcast, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We've discussed the preseason betting odds for both NFL and college football, whether it's MVP, Heisman, or the college football playoffs. We've discussed it here. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. I know for myself, I indulged in this last year, and it was a hit. Being able to watch games that I typically wouldn't be able to see was clutch, especially because I do have fantasy football leagues. I want to keep track of what guys are doing. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot, for being our everydayers. Coach K, Coach DP, walking into these locker rooms and handing out our game ball. Keith, I'm doing cold game balls today. I'm doing it off of week 0. I'm going into SMU's locker room, and I'm handing the game balls to Preston Stone and RJ Maryland. I'm giving the quarterback and his top receiver.
All in half. You cutting it in half, right?
I'm cutting it in half, Keith. I'm giving the game ball, giving it cold game balls in the situation. I don't know. Personally, they don't win this game without RJ Maryland. That's a fact, in my opinion. I don't know if they don't win, if they can come back and win this game without the performance of Preston Stone. No. And it was the deep ball down the left sideline on the slot fade to RJ Maryland, which is, it was like a 40-50 yard slot fade by that, at that. But it was the fact of how far he was able to push it out there. And that conversation you're talking about quarterback's accuracy, ball placement. Can you accurately place the ball in front of your receiver when he's got 2-3 yards on him instead of putting it outside the numbers? He put it right into the bucket, let him walk right into the end zone. And this young, again, with Preston Stone, near 57% completion, 254 passing yards and 1 touchdown. He had a couple rushing attempts as well. I think 35 yards on the ground. And with RJ Maryland, as we talked about earlier, 8 receptions. He had 10 targets, only had 2 passes that weren't completed, 8 receptions, 162 yards receiving, and a touchdown. 6'4", 240, track background, vertical speed. And this is a guy, to me, is going to have eyes on him the entire 2024 college football season. Because when you think about mismatches, and tight ends are the biggest mismatch in the league. Keith, I'm gonna throw a name out there to you real quick as I'm giving out these game balls. For RJ Maryland, could he be the next Isaiah Likely? That kind of smaller school tight end that doesn't have the traditional 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" build. He's not 255, not 260, but split out, he's a problem, right? And we've seen that with Isaiah Likely for the Baltimore Ravens, going from Coastal Carolina, where he was clearly a man amongst boys and as an athlete in the in the mid majors over there in the Sun Belt, to go into the Baltimore Ravens, and when Mark Andrews isn't there and they could give him his targets, he dominates. He's a baller. He plays all over their offensive formation. that's a comp for me that I'm probably going to stick to. Truthfully, Maryland might be more athletic and more explosive as an athlete than Isaiah Lockley. But in terms of comp and what I see from him, I was like, man, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Isaiah Lockley. And I think that's a comp that I might stick with. So my game ball goes to SMU quarterback Preston Stone and SMU leading star tight end. I call him star because he started Saturday night, RJ Maryland.
Yeah, I think RJ is actually a more fluid athlete. If I had to peg Isaiah Likely, I would probably say more straight line, right? Like he's more of a straight line person. I think RJ is a little bit more fluid. DP, I'm hopping in the locker room, baby. I'm giving my game ball to this Georgia Tech offensive line. Got to go back to the film. I don't know if they have a draft prospect on this offensive line, but they took it to Florida State, right? A defense that had so many guys, right? The people were listing out guys. I listed out guys pre-game. I know you listed out guys pre-game, right? And they took it to them to outrush this team by 100 yards, to just not even comparing, right? But you went for almost 200 yards against the Florida State defense, right? You would have thought that Georgia Tech would have been a team that rushed for 30-something times and only got 90-something yards, right? That's what it was supposed to be. So I'm giving it to this Georgia Tech offensive line because not only did they create lanes for the running backs, right? They created lanes for the quarterback, for Haynes King to have double-digit runs, and they set the tone and they set the tempo, right? When Florida State came down and scored, they turned right back around and said, you know what? We're about to win this game, right? And they went back down the field and scored again to be able to end the game. So I'm looking at that, and I remember watching pregame, and it's a mentality, right? That, they mic the coaches up, and, while they're warming up the ESPN College Game Day, they'll mic the coaches up, and then, they'll flash to the guys on the desk, and they're, just asking them a couple questions. Hey, coach, they asked him something about how do you win this game, right? And he, he said, man, we have to win in the trenches. We got to dominate the trenches, right? And then you're sitting there, you're like, okay, that's kind of coaches speak, right? Everybody says the trenches. But how are you going to run against those boys, right? Like, that's what you're thinking. Like, this is overwhelmingly the other way as far as the guys that people perceive to be more talented. So that was a mentality thing, DP. It's like, we're not worrying about, all we're talking about is today, right? In Dublin, Ireland. Can we beat those guys? We're not worrying about draft boards. We're not worrying about anything else. We're worrying about, can you move that guy across from you out the way? And those guys got the job done. So I'm walking in the locker room. Like you said, you split it up 2 ways. I'm splitting it up 5 ways. They had an extra tackle. They did some tackle over stuff, DP. I'm giving it 6 ways, right? But I'm giving it to this Georgia Tech offensive line.
Keith, that offensive line, I was just looking at the height and weight of the 5 to 6 guys who played. They averaged 6'5", 315 pounds, and about 4 of them are eligible for the 2025 NFL draft class. So, yes, Keith, they got some draft prospects. You hit the nail on the head. And what I love about this, Keith, and that's why football, it's so fun, because of the fact of their offensive linemen that are draft eligible weren't guys that people were talking about. Now, those offensive line enthusiasts and gurus and people who break down the tape, they're going to write to it like, all right, let's keep eyes on this group and see who starts to pop and see if this was a flash in the pan and just, hey, it's week 0. You know how week 1 in the NFL is. It's just, you never bet on the games in week 1 in the NFL because it's the opening week. You don't know what can happen, right? Was that the situation? Or are they going to dominate almost every defensive line they see in 2024? And Keith, I'm going to be honest with you. I am very much so looking forward to just that in itself. Because, again, when you look at especially their schedule, they're going to have Miami, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, Syracuse, Duke, North Carolina. They got Georgia at the end of the season. Man, if they can not say they're going to dominate Georgia, and no minds, that's Georgia. But if you could look respectable, blocking against Georgia's star defensive line, the end of the season in that but in that battle for the state of Georgia, that helped them a lot. So shout out to those boys, man. They came to play and they handled business, man.
I agree. But DP, that wraps up another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. I told you that was an action-packed show. Really good show. College football is back, baby. Listen, man, if you can hear my voice, go ahead and hit the like button. Don't forget to comment. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel over at Locked On NFL Draft. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. And you can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like I always like to say, man, y'all come talk to us. because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. On tomorrow's episode, Keith, I think we got to get into that defensive side of the ball real quick for some rankings. Edge rushers. This is a defensive loaded 2025 NFL draft class. We're going to rank our top 10 edge rushers heading into week 1, the real kickoff of the college football season, as some people like to view it. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.